What's up, guys? It's Benny. An absolutely massive and historic win for President Trump today in the New York Court of Appeals, who threw out the $500 million civil fraud penalty that Donald Trump was handed by these two colluding scumbags who both belong in prison, and one may well end up in jail for mortgage fraud, which is exactly what they tried to charge President Trump with effectively. It was always a witch hunt, election interference, and total miscarriage of justice. Even a left-leaning New York appeals court agrees no more lawfare. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, both Trump boys, celebrating total victory in the sham New York Attorney General case. After 5 years of hell, justice has prevailed. In February of 2024, a New York judge ordered Trump and his companies to pay $360 million plus penalties, claiming they duped banks. This was the same court that says that Mar-a-Lago was worth just $18 million when it is clearly a billion-dollar property. Anybody who's ever been there or knows anything about Palm Beach understands this. New York's appeals court thrown out the unprecedented politically motivated $500 million civil penalties case. They tried to impeach him, imprison him, bankrupt him, and kill him, and they failed. Huge win for Donald Trump. The court threw out the fraud penalty in Letitia James's case. Letitia James, ooh, baby, she can come get it. More on that in a second. Alina Habba, who was the spokesperson for President Trump during these cases, says today's ruling by the New York Appeals Court is a resounding victory for President Trump and his company. The court struck down the outrageous and unlawful $500 million penalty, confirming what we have said from the beginning, that the AG's case was politically motivated, legally baseless, and grossly excessive. President Trump won, and justice won with him. This is a massive L for Big Tish. My, how the tables have turned. Crime scene, Letitia James in the act of election interference. The entire case against Trump was bogus. A crime was to file charges against him and the Trump organization in the first place. Every talking head lawyer jerk who fueled this sham should be disbarred and arrested. Remember, this is what Letitia James looked like as she stared at President Trump. She knew what she was doing. Here's Fox News covering the breaking news of the case. The New York Post as well. Trump's massive $500 million fraud case thrown out by appeals court.
Want to get back to this breaking news? A New York appeals court has thrown out the massive civil fraud penalty against President Trump, a huge win for the president. He was originally ordered to pay more than $360 million plus interest. He was accused, of course, of financial statements, and that penalty has since gone up to nearly $500 million. Our national correspondent Brian Yennis has the latest now about what this all means. Brian?
Hi, Aisha. Well, again, to remind our viewers, this was a civil fraud case brought forward by the Attorney General Letitia James, claiming that the president and his sons in the Trump organization inflated their value and the value of their companies on financial forms. The penalty that they then were handed down after being found guilty in this civil case, or liable, I should say, in this civil case, was that they had to pay $364 million plus interest, which was $515 million. Well, now, after 11 months of looking at this case, the New York Appellate Court has decided to throw out that decision, that penalty, specifically the penalty. And this is the quote: while the injunctive relief ordered by the court is well crafted to curb defendants' business culture, the court's disgorgement order, they found, which directs that defendants pay nearly $500 million to the state of New York, is an excessive fine that violates the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The Eighth Amendment bans or calls out excessive bail that shall not be required, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So this appellate court found that $500 million that the Trump administration, that President Trump was set to owe to the state of New York, was cruel and unusual punishment, excessive, according to the law. The court did find, though, that the president and these defendants were liable. They agree that the Supreme Court, with the Attorney General, that the Attorney General acted well within her lawful power to bring this case forward. And they also found that the Supreme Court properly ruled only on the claims on this, but they obviously did not agree here on the penalty that was handed out. So basically here, after 11 months, the New York appellate court finding that this $500 million penalty was far too excessive, that gets thrown out. There are still avenues of appeal here available for the president on other manners with this case, particularly on whether or not this was politically motivated. Aisha.
Okay, Brian Yenes, live for us in New York. Thank you for breaking that down for us.
What I find so fascinating about this news cycle is that Letitia James is guilty of doing the exact same thing that she accused President Trump of doing. Here's investigator for the Department of Justice, Ed Martin, standing outside of Letitia James's rental property in Manhattan, where she claims, one, residency, but she also has other primary residences in like Virginia, for instance. And then two, she also claims that there are more apartments than there actually are in the building. This is another form of fraud. Good morning, America. How are you? Says Ed Martin with a photo ominously in front of this building. Yeah, baby. Things are going to flip and flip hard for Letitia James. Letitia James is not going to do great in this with the DOJ looking into her, and also with the throwing out of this case. The deed from Mar-a-Lago bars Trump from selling the estate. Trump nonetheless told banks, blah, blah, blah. Effectively, the ruling comes after some members of the 5-judge appeals panel appeared to be skeptical of the merits of the lawsuit brought by the AG. This is again in New York. Remember this scumbag? Remember this dirtbag, Arthur Edgeron? You remember the stuff that came out about this guy? About how he effectively can just overrule juries anytime he wants to. Also covers his microphone in plastic. Judge called the size of the penalty troubling and questioned the law that James had used to sue Trump, which does technically require somebody to be harmed and morphed into something it's not meant to do. So this is something that is not. And oh, by the way, the judge are both elected Democrats. James campaigned on promising to investigate Trump, calling the president a con man and a carnival barker. So it's going to flip around hard on Letitia James. Jonathan Turley sounding off on this on Fox News just a moment ago, breaking down what may be breaking next against Letitia James.
Jonathan, I want to ask you, this doesn't exonerate the president. It still finds him guilty of the crime, but it maybe gives him more of a fair shake.
Well, Aisha, thank you for having me on. This is obviously a tremendous victory for President Trump, but it's long overdue. During this litigation, many of us described this entire effort as a grotesque use of this New York law. No one lost money in this case. The banks actually wanted more business from President Trump. No one had ever seen an effort like this. It was an effort by Letitia James to have a trophy win against Trump. And what this opinion has done is to reduce what was a mounted marlin to something of a guppy. I mean, it has removed the fine and left in place the injunctive relief that President Trump can now appeal. So it is possible that even that could go to the wayside.